Assume I'm live. Okay, I am live. Shit. Okay, thank you for waiting on me. Shit. Wanting to see this is up. One man band is all I can do. Looking at my phone to see if it's coming through. I'm waiting for myself. Okay, beautiful. Showing me myself. Again, I'm my only chatter, and you won't be seeing me chat very much. Feel free to join if you must, but that's not necessarily the case of these streams. These streams are to archive a lot of crap that I want to do. So with that said, let's get right into it. Found a new critic. And you have all this. Look at some of the articles. Wiki article on Slim Pickens, Ryan Briggs, Mole Rats. I don't know why they're even there. Functional reload in case this goes down. I think this is one of the Ace Thorn targets is how I came across it. Creed was in it. Not doing Creed tonight because frankly, he is a tough person to untangle the weaves he weaves. The webs he weaves? Yeah, whatever. So let's just get into it. I left a comment. Bring it up. I only got 5 minutes into this. Figure I would save it for a stream. He has a whole series. Okay, this is just bringing up a video that I actually found quite interesting. Not really a criticism of Fallout 3, just a comparison of Fallout 3 versus New Vegas, where it said Fallout 3 is good and New Vegas is better because of the shantification of pretty much a lot of quests. Don't know about that. I don't think the video was too much, or I didn't see the whole thing because it was a re-upload. Maybe there's some stuff missing from that. See, and Fallout 3 critique part 1. Probably gonna start there. Maybe not. Maybe I should push that back, but we also have good old... Oh, wait. Ugh. This is the Mister Caption, and I went back. I was actually willing to do that. Oh well. I may not be too worried about it. Just find my place later. Or revisit some of the Mister Caption argument for why Fallout sucks. Let's get on with this.
Perfectly understandable if you are not, because it was coined by a YouTuber named Mr. B-Tongue in a video from about a decade ago.
Yep, some good history. He's going to give a simple breakdown of it.
That video was called The Shandification of Fallout. The term shandification is derived from Tristram Shandy, a novel written in the 1700s,
we don't really need
and it
that.
does an excellent job of illustrating why the storytelling in New Vegas is vastly superior to that of Fallout 3. Because
he doesn't say vastly superior, but he does imply it, so I'll give
text. But as a story becomes less linear, as it becomes more shandified, the distinction between story and setting begins to dissolve.
Sorry, just the term shantify is very funny to me. Sounds like an ass pull of a comment, but I could be wrong.
The setting becomes the story, and vice versa. Keep this in mind as I finally start talking about the ostensible subject of the entire video.
This is something that New Vegas does so very well, but Fallout 3, as well as 4 and 76, not so much.
See, poisoning the well by bringing Fallout 4 into it, and the Fallout game that shall not be mentioned. It's the Voldemort of the Fallout series, 76.
The main, and I suppose really the only example Mr. B-Tongue brings up in his video is the question, what do they eat?
If they have so much...
Okay, here's a good argument that I will have to address in my video. What do they eat? That is definitely a good question. The food is there, that you just don't see them getting the food, but let's move on.
In common? Then why is it that I thought Fallout 3 was merely good, while I thought New Vegas was one of the best games I've ever played? You can probably see this answer coming a mile away, but here it is anyway. The world of New Vegas was more effectively shandified.
Yep, that it was. Not gonna argue with that, even though I'm not quite sure if that's an accurate term.
I'll demonstrate what I mean by asking an obnoxious and repetitive question. A question I often ask when exploring fictional worlds. That question is this: what do they eat?
This
Yes, I don't know how that answers the question. I don't know how that question sort of makes any sort of statement, but that's besides the point.
This was, of course, just an example. It was the only example he brought up, but in my own videos I brought up some additional questions, such as in my recent lore video on Sarah Silver, where I asked the question, where does she get her drugs from? She either creates the drugs herself, or someone is supplying them to her.
I'm wondering if I should watch the other video first, but I just like the term of it and the shantification of mole rats. Leaving off of the Creed video that I did before, the mole rats issue. I want to see how he gets into it.
But the game neither shows,
Mainly because mole rats are not Megaton's food source, but I want to know what that but is. Haven't got to it yet, but let's move on.
nor tells how this is the case. Another example would be, where does Silver go to the bathroom, when her house doesn't even have a bathroom? And where does Lucas Sims take his prisoners, when Megaton doesn't have a jail in it? These are...
Why does he assume he takes the prisoners anywhere? Take him out back and shoot him. Why not? That's as good an answer as anything else.
questions I raise in my videos. These questions are similar to the question, what do they eat? And I'm sure you can think of many other examples where Fallout 3 fails to provide any answer.
Fail is a strong word. Implied is the word I would use better. I haven't watched the video. Where does someone get drugs? Obviously, they go somewhere for who sells drugs. Is there anyone who sells drugs? If yes, what's your problem then? The problem that I'm sure was cited is you never see her go anywhere to buy drugs or use the bathroom. Why I understand people's issue with this. There are to assume that Bethesda failed by not thinking about these questions, and if it was just a limitation of their actual engine. Did you see a lot of this going on in Fallout New Vegas? You need to give me examples of it happening in New Vegas, which it probably did because it was created later, but I would like to see some examples of this happening in New Vegas. Sure, they have crops around, and you assume the people get the food from the crops, but do you ever see them harvesting? Been too long. I would have to check it out.
And for a lot of players, and to be honest, probably most, they don't even think of these questions, and nor do they care. Their eyes are glued to the quest marker, and
bullshit, I swear. Why is he making this claim? This fucking H-bomber guy, freaking false claim about their eyes are glued. Why the hell do you make that assumption? You just want to poison the well with someone more well known making a very faulty argument?
and they do not take the time to notice or ponder the details of the world around them.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. This sort of relates to this, but I was getting some feedback from Reddit, and someone actually watched my one video on H-bomber guy, and they came back at me and be like, "You're doing media criticism wrong. He clearly doesn't state this." So I basically like, dude, Do you not understand media analysis? Do I have to teach you a course? Reading between the lines is part of media analysis. I know this. I'm pretty sure Harris, or should I call him H. Bomber Guy, understands it. But now I understand most of the audience watching these YouTube videos do not understand how media analysis, at least at an academic level, is proceeded. Not everything's freaking opinions. There are certain, you need to take into account pretty much who the words are coming from, at least on YouTube.
In a nutshell, is how you can tell the difference between a Fallout fan and a Bethesda fan.
Oh, sorry, that little rant made me forget. Yes, and in this game design thing, the issues, yes, it would have been nice if Fallout 3 showed where the people get their food, where they get their water, all those things. But it is implied between the lines where they get it. If there is wildlife, they probably hunt it. If there's a trader nearby, like there is outside of Megaton, at least when you first visit it, there's most likely going to be the doctor that they can get certain food from. It might, I believe the trader outside of Megaton changes occasionally, but I would have to go back and verify that to accurately make this assessment.
To be fair, sometimes they overlap, but these are separate and distinct communities, and each will view the respective games of the other side as boring. Bethesda fans consider the nuanced
I'm sure he'll say this. This is a very subjective argument, and I totally agree. Boring cannot be quantified. Everyone will have their own interest and their own preferences. So, boring to one person might be exciting to another.
storytelling of New Vegas to be boring, whereas Fallout fans consider the looter-shooter, quest marker following, and bad writing of Bethesda games to be boring.
Okay. Gotta point this out. There's some tainting of the well you have not established. None of these people established why the writing of Bethesda is bad. It's sort of just a pet peeve of mine. Before you say the writing's bad, you sort of need to establish why it's bad, and I've never... Maybe it's out there. Maybe there's clips of people using examples of bad writing, but I've never seen a real breakdown of why Bethesda writing, just the writing, characters dialogue, yes, Fallout 3 has some bad dialogue, some bad voice acting in some parts, but the writing of the story, that's a different matter altogether.
Both consider the other to be boring, and what is boring or not is entirely subjective, so no matter what their opinion is, they're right. Bethesda fans are right that New Vegas...
They can be right, but there are more versions of right. If you can cite examples, you can explain why it's boring, you will be more right. And if someone cannot argue with you, it's a minor point. There are degrees of rightness to establish, at least in argumentation. Okay, in their subjective worldview, they are absolutely right. But in a debate or even a discussion, the more points you have for your argument, the more substance it has. It's not about 100% accuracy or 0% accuracy. It usually falls somewhere in that scale, and that scale will be niggled by subjective facts. You need to use facts about the story to establish if it's boring or not. You can't just outright lie in about an element of the story and say, oh, that was boring, but that wasn't in it.
is boring, and New Vegas fans are right that Bethesda games are boring, but in very different ways. That's why there is a division in the community which is irreconcilable. Fallout
It's not it's not irreconcilable. I'm having trouble with that word. I have trouble with a lot of words. This is usually take a blow to my credibility because my mush mouth won't say certain words properly, but that's besides the point. But yes, it's not whatever that is. It's because people want to believe everyone can have their own opinion. There are arguments and discussions you can have across the aisle about good merits and bad merits to each game. It doesn't need to be one-to-one comparison even. Bethesda Fallout 3 can be better in some areas. I've even heard that argued several times. And Fallout New Vegas can be better in other areas. It doesn't make one better than the other. Just they have strengths in different areas, and depending on what you're looking for in a game will determine which side you'll sort of fade to. But coming to an understanding about the strengths, because there are differences in the games. They both have strengths overall. Just coming to that understanding is an important way that people across the aisle can discuss these issues without insulting the other game. Not saying there's no reason to insult either game. There's probably plenty, but generally from what I know, it comes down to subjective opinion on that, and that's hard. Coming to understand someone else's subjective opinion is definitely a plus, and plus means better.
Fallout 3 fails in its design regarding what the entire main plot revolves around.
Ah, yes, okay. He's going to get into water, and this is definitely a faulty argument in my opinion. I can back that up with evidence to give my opinion more weight than these guys can back up their evidence. So I'll address each point if he is going to get into what I think he's going to get into, the water issue.
Water, or to be more specific, purified water. We are told that the lack of purified water is the biggest problem in the Capital Wasteland, yet the game does a piss-poor job of showing us that this is the case.
Does it really now? Do you see farms? Do you see anything that shows that water is being used except for to be drank? Do people bathe in the Capital Wasteland? Do you see that a lot? I don't think they see that a lot. A lot of dirty people. I would have to go back over it, but I'm thinking there's a lot of dirty people. And I doubt many people, except for rich people, use actual water to clean themselves.
Most NPCs throughout the game seem to be content with whatever irradiated.
Content is different than satisfied. Content is something you've come to understand. Now, this is 200 years later. The norm is irradiated water. And on those rare occasions that you can get your hands on purified water, that's probably doesn't even come into their mind. It's all the same to those people. Water's water to those folks. But some people probably want their water purified. Those are the elite.
Water they have.
Or the hard worker. I'm pretty sure the Sheriff Lucas gets his fair share of water for the work he does for Megaton.
Go to any major settlement and the issue of water is seldom brought up. Instead,
yes, because the status quo is they drink irradiated water. I don't even know if they realize that their lifespan and health will be degraded by it. There's no understanding that this is bad. People from us, we understand irradiated water. You think the people of the DC wasteland are that educated to understand that irradiated water is bad? No, they just are used to that feeling of being sick. And if they take some not rads, but Radaway, whatever. I think, yeah, Radaway, they feel a little bit better if they get enough Radaway. That is how it works in the Fallout universe. That's probably their understanding of that. They don't even think probably. I'm not going to speculate any further on that matter.
Instead, NPCs have nothing but free time to squander building Rube Goldberg machines, LARPing in costumes like children, or being obsessed with Nuka-Cola. The game doesn't.
Yes, they don't find anything wrong with the water. I already made this argument. It's the status quo. You can't question something you don't know. You would have to make this argument, you would have to establish these people know. There are people who know that if there was enough purified water, that it would significantly improve their lives. Other people have to find ways to spend their life pretty much in pain, I would guess, more time than not. This is what you do with a life without a true purpose. They can't get real jobs, they're just surviving. So some people will be content with that, and other people will want to find a purpose in their life. I can't believe I'm freaking trying to explain this away. They aren't using their imagination enough or logic in reality of how humans here behave.
Do an adequate job of showing us that the lack of purified water is a
They don't do an adequate enough job of showing. Okay, evidence, please.
major issue that weighs heavily on everyone's minds.
It does not. But if we were in a conversation, we could talk about it. But this is a reaction, so let me not pause him every time he says the same thing that I find rather flawed.
But the game does tell us this. The only exception to this rule is with a handful of water beggars outside of the major settlements. You gotta give.
Yes, they're the have-nots. They don't do any work, so they probably don't get a fair share of rations. Do we not have beggars? Water's probably about the currency in the Fallout 3 universe. And these beggars, they don't do any work, so they probably get the minimum amount of water to survive. And look at that dirt.
Give these water beggars credit because they alone carry the entire rationale of Fallout 3's.
No, they are probably close to dying, and this is an uncaring society who doesn't care if these people die.
Main plot upon their shoulders. They are like the mighty arms of Atlas holding the heavens from the earth. Aside from them, and them alone, no one else in the game seems to give a shit. Everything that James is doing and his.
Yeah, no one seems to give a shit. People live, people die. You think we're cold to beggars in our modern society? In a survival situation, even colder.
Noble sacrifice. It is for these water beggars alone.
Do it for you.
Only the water beggars care that their water be purified. They insist.
No, they're just probably at a rad level where they show the rad levels what happens. Basic rad sickness. They know if they drink too much irradiated, which they're not getting purified water because they're not doing the jobs to get paid the water. This is just a theory and all, but a theory to counter a theory is perfectly fine.
That their water be purified. Everyone else is content to drink regular irradiated water. But the
Who says that? Where's this claim? Please cite your source. Just because they don't bring it up as a major concern why these beggars sort of are probably at a rad level that they're really feeling the effects and probably not being able to afford the rad away. That's how things go here.
beggars will allow themselves to literally die of thirst rather than drink regular water. So it turns out that beggars really can be choosers after all. Now, as for the question, what do they eat? Well, it is true that on the hierarchy of needs, food is a bit less important than water. You can live for quite some time without food, but without
That is correct. Thank you for saying at least one thing that is a fact.
water, you'll die within a few days. These water beggars don't have water, but they also don't visibly have access to food.
Oh, look, there was a trader there. Right there. It was in the dark. Maybe armor. But whatever the vendor is, usually they have a little bit of meds, a little bit of food. Who knows what you'll get with various... I'm sure I could bring up a list, but this is not the time.
Food either. Unless this refrigerator in the ruins of Springvale happens to be Mickey's secret stash. So, what do the people in Fallout 3 eat? That's the main question Mr. B-Tongue asks in his video. It starts with the town of Megaton, but it doesn't end there. What do people in Rivet City, Tenpenny Tower, Canterbury...
I assume there's hunters. I'm sure he will address that you never see anyone hunting. But it's obvious at some points they have to hunt for food, or unless they're happen to trade for it. What do they trade for it? Either goods made or water.
Commons, Paradise Falls, the super mutants in the DC ruins, and so on and so forth eat. About 5 years after Mr. B-Tongue made that video, another YouTuber named Many a True Nerd made his infamous Fallout 3 is better than you think video, which was primarily...
Oh, he's going to cite this also. I thought he was doing Oxhorn, but maybe I'm wrong with that. So he cites Many a True Nerd also. Let's see how this turns out. At least it won't... Hopefully it's not framed as... Hopefully it's not as framed badly as freaking Creed's version of this.
primarily intended to be a response to H-Bomber Guy, but he did briefly mention the shandification of Fallout at one point.
You see, there's an old video from about 5 years ago that discusses Fallout 3 in New Vegas called The Shandification of Fallout, which basically discusses how games work better if their basic logistics have been thought through and it's obvious how basic human needs are being met. So in the case of Megaton, the city has food because the one upside of the apocalypse is that wildlife is massive now, and there are plenty of mole rats right by the side of the town. As for water, well, when the bomb hit but didn't detonate...
Okay. Wildlife is massive now, and there's plenty of mole rats right by the side of the city. Okay, convenient location for those mole rats. I'm sure for better food, there's other wildlife you can hunt if you want to take the risk of going further from town.
It made a crater, one deep enough that the town has access to groundwater. Sure, it's radioactive, but so is all water. That's kind of the point of the main plot. The game literally begins with your dad talking about the waters of life and going on to tell you how terrible life is outside the vault. And then the very first town you get to after you leave uses a puddle in a radioactive crater as its water supply.
And he disingenuously and
Disingenuously. Did you hear that, Freeman? Well, let's hope he keeps it that simple.
incorrectly tried to explain the town of Megaton, making sense, because, as Matin erroneously claims, when the bomb hit but didn't explode, it somehow comically hit the ground with such force that it blasted a crater all the way down to groundwater, and that this ground...
Yes, it happened to hit at least a vein of underground stream or well of water, which is why there's a pool of water around the bomb, I would assume. Unless the water is coming from the bomb, which doesn't make any sense.
Groundwater is the town's water supply. I've debunked this in depth in my direct response to his video, and so...
Okay. Let's hear him out. Quit after this. I guess I'll have to start on his video to watch this video. But let's continue a bit more.
So has Creetosis in his 8-hour-long response.
Oh, and Creetosis. I think I might have pronounced it right in my video, but I frankly don't care if I get his name wrong, and I'm still gonna be Cree.
There are many
Cause Cree likes to go ree. Bad joke, but it works.
reasons why Matin is wrong, but perhaps the most damning thing is what one of the characters within the game tells us.
When the war happened, the machines started dropping from the sky. Everyone around here thinks that the bomb made the crater, but it didn't.
Matin boasts about he knows where all the characters in the town sleep, yet he apparently never considered it to be worth his time to actually talk to them. You just know that Fallout 3 really...
Okay. When did he say it wasn't worth his time? These people keep on making erroneous statements. Okay, I'll have to watch this video. I'll stop with this. This is not as bad faith as Creed, but at least along the same lines. Trying to pick up on that. Let's go back. Find our place with Mister Caption.
I'm not a big fan of this. I'm talking about it. It's really a lot of being experience, just more fun. Same thing, but doesn't expect you to know who this is. One who says they dislike. And yeah, of course, you as a player can also just do all this experimentation on your own. But if you've ever played a tabletop game, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's really a lot of fun to.
Yep, his tabletop argument. I'm pretty sure I got
more fitting because I really just like the way this looks. Like if you're just north, you can go directly north of Good Springs. If you're there's like an abandoned train, very safe wasteland. We eventually make it to the doors of Megaton. Later on in the video, but if we stay underwater for too long, we will drown. There's a variety of other things, but that's just a few examples. Two of them I listed being very, very important as to why Fallout 3's world doesn't work. Fallout 3 sets up a situation where...
Okay, definitely watched this last stream, so... Pop ahead, food, vegetation... Okay, let's try from here.
Was how much they actually care about it. They were willing to sit down and ask themselves what could make our game world cool while also asking themselves how does it work. For people like me who are very pedantic about everything they look at in every video game they play, it is very rewarding to know that the attention I'm paying to the details of this world and just to the game these people eat. Megaton I can't help but mentioning in the very mechanics of how the world works is just hand-waved away as if it isn't important enough. And when it isn't...
I did have the thought, is he going to show people working the farms or wrangling the cattle? I'm sure there's people out on the fields. And that's definitely better than not showing the people of Fallout doing anything about their food. But Fallout 3, there were no farms. There was very few wildlife that wasn't just wild. That could have been herded. It was a fundamental difference between the West Coast and East Coast ecology and basically infrastructure. West Coast has fresh water supply. Apparently they have at least a big enough purifier that they can get away with this. Is this apparent in Fallout 3? I mean, you can say it's wrong that they cannot purify enough water to create farms. But I don't know where I'm going with that one. That one isn't a... You would have to know so much, and I would have to hear an argument for why New Vegas has so much purified water. I think I've actually looked up that DC was much more irradiated than the DC wasteland, and that seemed like a decent argument to me that the wasteland was not a big target for the bombs dropping. They would have done cities, and they definitely would have hit the capital the hardest.
Included, it probably won't even be noticed or appreciated. I mean, how many people out there are really going to care about the fact that Fallout New Vegas has corn and plants in it? Effectively, no.
Yeah, but you don't see anyone actually picking the corn or bringing it in. See why I hate these erroneous arguments? I mean, if they showed me an example of someone picking the vegetables, but it's there, so obviously people pick it. There's wildlife to hunt. There's traders to get food from. Obviously the people, but people tend to see their own if they have a bias, they'll tend to imagine things a lot easier than if they have a bias against something, they'll see the negative side of it. It's basic human psychology.
No one, that's why I have to do it. The developers of Fallout New Vegas actually took time to wonder how their world was going to function on a very basic level. They show off.
And Bethesda, at least I would assume, he's making an assumption, so I'm going to make the assumption. Bethesda wanted to show a much more basically horrible, hostile environment compared to the Mojave Desert. So they wanted, yeah, I'm sort of bullshitting this, but he's bullshitting it. It gives me the right to bullshit. At least I think that. But he goes about comparing the two environments like they're the same. DC Wastelands would not have the same infrastructure, and it's, in theory, at least from what I've seen, read, and got a taste of online, you know, that sweet people theorizing and crap. Could be a bunch of crap, but you actually have a bomb at, maybe the bomb of Megaton is in that first city. It was a purposeful decision to show how badly this area was messed up. Do you see bombs? I don't know, but it's definitely a thought on that. Definitely the idea that the DC Wasteland, it was much more bombed, so therefore more irradiated, makes a lot of sense comparison to a desert. Who would bomb a desert?
Very explicitly where every town is going to get their stuff. What they grow, what they farm, what they ranch, where they get their water in some cases. When I look at something like Megaton, I can't help but think, what are these people eating and how are they alive? When I look at Good Springs, I can see very clearly that they are ranching bighorners and that they are growing maize. I don't have to worry about how the world of Fallout New Vegas works because
Yes, it is very convenient that they have a better ecosystem to grow and to raise livestock, but Fallout 3 didn't have that. They wanted to do a more depressive, more destroyed ecosystem overall. And the fact that more of their waters are irradiated means that they can't farm like they do in New Vegas.
it's explained right there for me. They get their water from the springs of Good Springs, what the town is named after, and they grow their own food. But
So they have a purified freshwater source. That is great. I guess somehow they avoided a lot of the radiation, and the, you know, radiation clouds probably fucked with the ecosystem a bit, but not the same level as some place that was bombed directly. Crazy thought, I know.
But it's not just a matter of assuring that the world actually works from a logical standpoint, it's the fact that it also shows just the amount of attentiveness and detail that was put into this world when it was originally built.
No, it shows that they could grow stuff in the Mojave Desert near Hoover Dam, who apparently has unradiated water source. Why DC Wasteland, why it's very ridiculous. I've seen arguments saying the water would be contaminated by the extracts that runs off, because the water isn't actually contaminated. It just has particles that are contaminated. Water cannot actually be irradiated. It can just contain pretty much isotopes that will be irradiated, or dirt if it isn't properly. I think it's the particles. That's why filtering the water actually can work. It's not the water, it's particles within the water that can be filtered out that will make purified water.
Built. The fact that the developers of Fallout New Vegas were actually willing to sit down and ask themselves what do these people eat when they were thinking up this whole world just shows how much they actually care about it. They were willing to sit down and ask themselves what could make our game world cool while also asking themselves how does it work. For people,
No, all they had to ask themselves is, we're in the same setting as before. What did they do before? We had farms in Fallout 1 and 2. Let's just put farms in Fallout New Vegas because it's a close enough area that we can get away with it. Sudden people, no one thinks about sudden in this argument. So I hope this isn't a complete dismantlation of this.
Like me, who are very pedantic about everything they look at in every video game they play, it is very rewarding.
Yes, but you're not thinking about the actual story, okay? There's some things that I will give some people credit. If the old lady from Fallout 3 says that everyone believes that the crater was created by the bomb dropping and she remembers it differently, that's hard to say. Could be a memory fault or she's a liar, but I'm not. That would be straw manning that person or calling them a in-game liar, and no evidence for that. But moving on.
To know that the attention I'm paying to the details of this world and just to the game in general is being rewarded with just something. The fact that I actually wondered, what do these people eat, and got a response back that made sense is fantastic. In Fallout 3, this is just...
Yes, it's very easy world building that was already provided before. Just copy paste it. Why Bethesda tried to take a harder route, and maybe that did disrupt some people's perception of the world building.
Disappointing because I paid attention to my game, asked this very same question, and got no response. And I know that this is incredibly pedantic of me, but personally I prefer it when thinking about my video game doesn't make the experience worse. If you're gonna let me create...
But did you do enough thinking, or is your bias going to let you see the negatives of one side, like believing that Bethesda stole Fallout from the rightful creators, and the rightful creators just used Bethesda's game engine to pretty much create a sequel to their original property? No one ever thinks about these things.
My character and choose what role they're going to have in this massive RPG world you've created. Please forgive me for actually trying to immerse myself in that world. I'm very sorry.
Yes, but the people of pretty much the Mojave Desert, the West Coast, obviously have much more privileged lives that they can farm on their lands. Why the DC wasteland? I don't know if it's supported, but I've seen a lot of evidence that they're probably much more irradiated, both the landmass and the water, so they don't have the luxuries of the Mojave Desert.
But it's not just the biology of this world that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's also the people. This is where it all comes full circle, children. This is where I once again start talking about Megaton. So let me get this straight. The people of Megaton decided, in this game that is constantly shoving it in your face that this is a very desperate survival situation. Some people aren't even eating 2 meals a day without the help of a book. You're going to tell me that in this incredibly dire situation where people aren't eating, they've got no clean water, nothing, and it's your job to help them, that instead of building a giant metal city around, food, people decided to build it around a giant nuclear bomb.
What food? What landmass can support growing? You already established most things are dead besides just weeds and grass and a few bushes here and there, maybe some flowers in a graveyard.
That's active. Even if it wasn't active, it could still explode.
Oh yeah, he gets ravaged in the comments for this. Okay, too bad. Nice to remind him Lucas Sims did not name or found the town of Megaton. Yeah, it does not seem very likely.
Lucas Sims must have just gotten up one day and been like, oh, well, I want to start a new town, but instead of putting that near some food or water or something, we're just going to build it on this giant bomb. It's not like someone could blow it up. Bombs don't blow up. That doesn't happen. Like, you live in a world where nukes...
Funny, but inaccurate. Just at least give him credit for that.
Destroyed everything. Why would you set up near one? That's like being born during a hospital fire and then buying a house that has noted faulty electrical equipment. You just think maybe people might be a little bit paranoid about that, right?
Were any of these people around during the Great War when these bombs were going off? No, I don't think they were. Maybe some of the ghouls. I wouldn't imagine ghouls wanted to live in the city. They might have bad memories of the bombs. But aside from that, the newer generations, it's just a part of the landscape. That bomb has always been in the city. It's always been safe. That's the sort of that's the sort of psychology that is very realistic to pull off, but no one ever considers things like actual differences between these two environments and the psychology of these theoretical people and what the differences between the two would be.
And it's not like these people don't know that it's a bomb. Confessor
Yeah, there's some people who even worship the bomb. Does that sound sane? No.
Cromwell talks about the splitting of atoms in his religious speeches. Moira knows that it's a bomb. Mr. Burks, or whatever his dumbass name is, he knows it's a bomb. And Lucas Sims named the town Megaton. It's like building your town on an Indian burial ground and calling it The Haunt. Sad part is, this isn't even the only example of people doing completely stupid and inane shit. Like, Megaton itself, that's a relatively isolated incident, right? Whatever. The main problem with people not thinking things through, we'll talk about later when we talk about the factions, because it's a big deal. I have, however, made my point. Let's move on with the plot here. Okay, so now we're in Megaton. Next thing we gotta do is find our dad. How do we find our dad? We gotta go get some information from the local bartender named Moriarty. I actually like this little snippet of the main questline where we have to go get information out of Moriarty, because they allow you to do it in a multitude of different ways. You can either do a...
Yep. Well, this is why I like Mister Caption. He at least gives it credit when credit's due. He doesn't go too hard on it. He just gives his thoughts and opinions. His thoughts and opinions can be completely wrong, but I'll forgive him for being so gosh darn entertaining. Best critic yet out of all these. Mainly because our dear Father Elijahcal, or whatever his name was pretty much just going off the standard talking points, going over what other people have already talked about. If it wasn't H Bomber Guy or whoever did the Shadification or Creetosis or Creed, I really need to stop attempting to say his whole name. I really don't think he deserved the respect, but I'll have to break that down in its own separate video, it looks like.
Speech check to just get it out of him. You can do a little deed for him if you don't have the money, or if you do have the money, you can just give him 100 caps and he'll tell you what to do. Or you can just kill him, go into his terminal and do it that way, or you could sneak around him and go in his terminal when he's asleep or something like that.
Okay, I was gonna pause there for a minute. Yeah, you don't need to kill him to go in his terminal. But he already said it. Such an honest man.
A lot of people who tagged a bunch of different skills to all do this quest in their own way if they want to, and has a backup for anybody who can't do the quest in one of these, special ways. Contrast this with Fallout 4, where sometimes you get to have a speech check for like 100 extra caps. Maybe. You can do this quest however you want. I'm just gonna pay Moriarty here and get the information straight from him. He tells us our dad went to a place called GNR, Galaxy News Radio. I mean, we all know what that is. What do I even have to tell you? Which to get to requires we go through...
Apparently, you don't even need to get the information from Morality if you end up doing some exploring. And if you listen to the radio, you might get a hint that your dad passed by, but that was from a YouTuber who I can't verify his accuracy if he used out-of-game knowledge to sort of use his narrative of his retrospective of Fallout 3, but if that is the case, then you don't even need morality if you pay attention to the radio and you listen and he says it.
The DC ruins, oh spooky. On our way through the DC ruins to GNR, we are introduced to super mutants for the first time, and they're not like shoved in our face or anything, they're just there, which is nice. We also get introduced to an unhealthy amount of hunting rifles. The reason this is because Fallout 3, let's be honest, doesn't have that many weapons, especially base Fallout 3 without any of the DLCs. And to be honest, Fallout 3 and New Vegas combat isn't that great. Most weapons don't function all that differently from one another. It's not like Quake or anything like that. It's Fallout. A lot of the guns just sort of feel the same and do the same.
Yeah, but do they have different ranges, different power levels? Sure, they might feel the same to the average player, but you got a scope on that gun. Does that not help at all? It probably actually does help with given the freaking fact that it doesn't have iron sights and the zoom mechanism is a joke.
Thing. So at the very least, they could have included a lot of them, right? Like what New Vegas did? No, Fallout 3 had like, I don't even know, 80-something weapons on launch, I think, maybe? And unfortunately, they're trying to encompass, you know, a bunch of different kinds of guns and also melee weapons and explosive weapons into that.
Maybe they wanted to go with the theme of scarcity. Things are rare, at least when you're in the DC ruins, it will be harder to find anything specialized. But that's just a theory.
So yeah, there's a lot of like variety on a weapon by weapon basis, but even then, most of the combat is still just the same. You know, point at the dude and click. Hope the fucking RNG is in your favor. So personally, I would have at least preferred there to be a lot of guns. That way, the world doesn't feel like I'm seeing the same guns over and over and over again, and there's a little bit more artistic variety. I
I think this is a non-issue. It's not worth criticizing the game over this. But what do I know? Everyone's going to have their own subjective opinion about this. Yeah, subjective. The subject will have a certain opinion. Objectively, is it bad? No. It would fit the sort of the desolate wasteland that isn't as apparent. You can argue that why is DC Wasteland this bad after this much time? I don't know. Okay. It seems to be the mood they're going for, and you can extrapolate competent reasons for why that is.
criticized Fallout 4 for making it so I had to use the same exact pipe rifle 40 different times and see every single raider in the game spawn with a different form of pipe rifle, and I didn't like it here either, where every raider spawns with either an assault rifle, a flamer, or a hunting rifle. And it's especially bad for super mutants because they don't have any one-handed animations, so they have to use hunting rifles, assault rifles, like rocket launchers and minigun type things. And only that. They can also only wield, like, what, two different weapons? I think they only wield nail boards and super sledges in Fallout 3. And they can't use mines, so yeah, super mutants feel pretty samey. And yes, we will be talking about super mutants later on, don't worry, children. Anyway, on our way to GNR, we get to Fallout...
Oh boy! Are you gonna give us candy canes and lollipops, Mister Caption? I love those. Too bad, they're not in Fallout 3. Aww.
Fallout 3's favorite thing, metros. Oh, yes! There's one part of Fallout 3 I love. It's the fucking metros. No, but on a serious note, fuck metros.
I actually live in the DC area, and I agree with the metros in real life. Metros are not fun. They're samey, they're dirty, they're smelly, and they're populated by assholes. How's that different than the Fallout world? No one wants to go in the metro. They would rather take the car, but parking sucks too.
There are way too many metros in Fallout. It's like the same thing.
There's way too many metros in DC. It's true to life. I know that the Fallout universe is an alternative, but parallels with the real life are going to happen even if there's stylistic changes within the game because of the alternative universe angle. But they could go more, they could go crazier. Just never know what you're going to get when you get an alternative universe that parallels our own.
Thing over and over and over again. They're so fucking bland. And I don't think I'm alone in this criticism. I don't think anybody likes the amount of metro.
Well, you're just wrong in this criticism because it's not in line with reality. I mean, you can dislike it. You can dislike the design. Go to freaking metros. They are samey. That's just practical purposes. Yeah, you can dislike them. You can dislike how they are. Give me why you dislike it before I continue.
Metros in Fallout 3. I know they're kind of a necessary evil, because otherwise we would have had to wait even longer for Fallout 3 to be released, because they would have had to add, like, leveled out every single part of the DC area, and making metros is just a convenient way to get to the certain...
No. It's very apparent they wanted to distinguish themselves from the original Fallout games, and you have a team who's in Rockville or Silver Spring, Maryland, like a hop skip away from DC. They wanted to incorporate the more urban design comparison to the rule design of the original Fallout games. This really does seem to be a matter between seeing the post-apocalypse in a formerly rural area and the post-apocalypse in a former urban area. There is going to be a vast amount of differences in how the landscape is. The only criticism I might have for the DC Metro is that more of them should have been impassable. There's quite a few that are impassable and you have little tunnels, but if you want to go realistically and from a world building perspective, a lot of these should not be a straight shot. But you could also say over the years people have fortified and sort of cleared out some of the rubble that these tunnels fell into disarray. Over? Yeah, we'll go with that.
Chunks that they actually did model out, but honestly, I don't know, that wait time might have been worth it. Anyway, we go through our metro and we finally find the Brotherhood of Steel. Sort of. Remember that thing?
Sort of. Okay. Please do explain and don't freaking just leave out all the context. Maybe you'll get to it later. Criticism Brotherhood of Steel is quite lame in my opinion, and it comes from a rosy retrospective of the original games. And last stream I think I might brought it, denialism. From the rosy retrospective of the old games, they start blaming Fallout 3 and Bethesda for the decline of Fallout 4 and sort of, but I guess this is too early of a date for that. I'm like thinking, I have no clue when this video was made. I'm pretty sure Fallout 4 was at least announced. I think he actually even mentions it with the pipe pistols. So Fallout 4 was here, so definitely denialism, the opposite of rosy reflections, has come into play.
I told you about earlier, how we were gonna complain about how nobody made any fucking decisions that made any sense and that there was an even bigger problem than Megaton. Welcome to it, motherfucker. It's the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3. Okay, so everybody usually knows why people don't like the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3. It's because they go around helping too many fucking people.
Yes, and they're retarded, obviously, because they don't understand that this is a certain section that have broken away from the philosophy of the original Brotherhood. The time difference, them being sent off far away, that's almost even more, well, it's not ridiculous for the Brotherhood to send out scouts to any major city to try to collect technology. There might be also goodies, but it's rather cold-hearted, and we'll see what he does now.
People for their source material, right? The original Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout 1 and 2 are a bunch of xenophobic fucking bastards who just want to hoard all the technology in the wasteland and be a bunch of racists. And
yes, and there's still a bunch who still hold on to that ideology in the Outcasts. The main leader thought it would be good to actually help people. An ideological split. If you were sent away, you might even volunteer if you started having problems with the Brotherhood's philosophy. You might be like, who wants to go to the DC wastelands? Like, shit, that at least 1,000 miles away, I would guess. If I can't be certain of that, but I would guess about 1,000 miles away. Who wants to trek across 1,000 miles? Everyone in the Brotherhood would be like, why the fuck would I do that? Dude who actually has a branch who sort of doesn't like the main Brotherhood branch would be like, okay, we'll do it. We'll brace the dangers and go there and collect technology to bring right back to you. Wink, wink. Sure. Nope. Very possible they wanted to find a reason to break away or to help people. Being so far away would mean that the main branch of the Brotherhood would not be able to do very much if they just broke away.
not have to touch any of the dirty overworld people. They think everyone who's not in the Brotherhood of Steel is a moron and is incapable of using advanced technology because the world around them was destroyed because of people misusing advanced technology. Remember, the Brotherhood of Steel came from the original US military. The founder of the Brotherhood of Steel was there to see all the bombs drop and see the world he once...
Yes, and how far away was that? 200 years, I believe? Yeah, I'm pretty sure the founder is dead. I'm pretty sure his son or daughter or grandchild is probably dead within 200 years. Let me see. People are probably 70. Let's say he's like in his 20 or 30s, because I don't know the age canonically of the founder of the Brotherhood of Steel, but let's just say he's in the 30s. He has a child probably after that, so child, let's say 10 years after that, child grows up, has 70 years of life. That's actually a high bar. You have 70 years, has a child in the 30s. You eat 7 and 7. I don't want to do the math, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure you're at least on the great children of the founders of the Brotherhood of Steel at this point in the story. Unless they became a ghoul. More likely they died and they probably had children more earlier. So probably greater than that.
Knew turned into the world he knew now. And eventually his teachings of basically telling everyone not to misuse technology and not to allow, you know, the fucking raiders and shit to get their hands on good stuff has turned into this, like, almost...
So, teachings from long ago not getting corrupted and changed and sex breaking off from the main branch. That never happens in history. Never.
Neo-religious fascism where the Brotherhood of Steel go around fucking...
I mean, Christians are one solidified unit now. There aren't a whole bunch of fucking chapters. I know that's religion, but at this point in time, it's almost the same. It's more of a... The philosophy of the Brotherhood of Steel would be the same as a religion. At least in my opinion, and I could probably make a very strong argument for that if I poured over the material, but not at this point.
With everybody who has technology and making sure no one is better than them. That's not to say they were necessarily evil either. I mean, yeah, they did eventually start trading with other factions in the wasteland, you know, cities and pockets of civilization. But still, if you had good tech and you went near the Brotherhood of Steel, they were probably gonna kill you for it, or, you know, just force it out of you. However, again, they're not just evil. They did also help keep raider populations down in the core region, because, you know, they have all the biggest guns, and raiders are fucking dumb and shoot anything for trying to, you know, fucking...
I object to the straw man and of raiders. Just a certain amount of them were probably dumb as a box of rocks. I'm sure there was some average intelligent person. This isn't like Mad Max or anything, or is it? Probably some overlap given the core of it.
Walk around. Raiders in Fallout 1 and 2 were not very smart. However, to counterbalance that, again, the Brotherhood of Steel also hoarded all the technology they got, including their medical supplies, which a lot of the Wasteland could have used. Basically, the Brotherhood of Steel just cared about themselves and not really anyone else. Like, everyone else could die and they really wouldn't give a shit. They're all about themselves. They're isolationists, even to the point of xenophobia, where they just don't like anyone from the outside. I mean, the only recruitment policy for the Brotherhood...
Damn. You'd figure, like with Vault 101, there would be problems with incest in that case. No new genetic. I'm sure they had to accept some people, but even in Fallout 1, that trial by fire to join or even to come in was rather ridiculous. And definitely there would be cases of genetic... This just sounds like recipe for disaster if they didn't let anyone else in. They would have had to open up over generations just simply for the genetic diversity. I didn't think about how faulty this is, them being xenophobic and not liking outsiders. And they would have had to open up. That's the main crux of my story.
Steel in Fallout 1 was go to this place that has so much radiation it'll kill you and don't come back, please. And now in this Brotherhood of Steel, we hear about them recruiting Wastelanders all willy-nilly and going around dealing with the super mutant problem for no reason other than that there is a super mutant problem. Like, the Brotherhood's not gaining anything out of these super mutants. They don't have any advanced tech. They use, like, assault rifles and shit, and the Brotherhood of Steel is just killing them just cuz, and they go around, you know, losing all their soldiers and having to hire out...
Okay, hope he does not go too long onto the subject matter because it's rather faulty unless he wants to bring up the divide between the outcast and the main Brotherhood of Steel that you deal with.
Wastelanders who they shouldn't like, Bethesda, to work in their armies, and that is ridiculous. And after that, they also care about the fact that no one has any water to drink by helping us get the Jefferson Memorial. And it's not just getting the Jefferson Memorial that they helped us out with, they help us clear it out of the Enclave, which makes sense for the Brotherhood because they don't like the Enclave, if you haven't noticed. But they also help us distribute water by running water caravans. What the fuck? Why is the Brotherhood of Steel giving a shit about any of the people in the capital?
Because this is the crazed Martin Luther's of the Brotherhood of Steel, stapling his damnation of the current church. You've fallen away, or we're not doing enough, some crap like that.
Capital Wasteland? Like, seriously, the people of the Capital Wasteland don't seem to give much of a shit back. Why does the Brotherhood care about...
Why are you not giving a shit that this group broke off? Is he playing this like... Is he giving this explanation all willy-nilly and not playing the game throughout? It sounds like... I get the impression he's gone through this game one entire time before, and he's still making this lame-ass argument. I mean, it's a little pissing me off, but it's more the length. He's not straw man into the same level. To straw man, you would have to sort of misframe him. He's correctly explained what the Brotherhood of Steel is, but he's not explaining any of the context around this particular group who broke from the ideology of the Brotherhood of Steel of the West Coast.
Helping any of these people. I mean, no one has any food or water, so what do they have to trade the Brotherhood that the Brotherhood wants? Tech? No one has tech. Everyone's living in shitty little houses and a fucking makeshift plane. Only thing I could think any of these settlements have to offer the Brotherhood of Steel is new recruits, but why would the Brotherhood of Steel want these people's new recruits? They think all the Wastelanders are, like, gross and uneducated and dumb. Hell, even in this game, they say that all their new Wasteland recruits are too trigger-happy and useless. Would they even...
Well, it's sort of hard to get good. You would need to train them. They're at least attempting to do it. They're still going to have a bias against outsiders, but they actually evolve, grow. They think in long terms. Well, not always, but at least to a more of a degree. I can come up with at least a couple reasons the Brotherhood of Steel cannot stay the same as they were in Fallout 1 as they are however many years that they pop up in Fallout 3 later. It just is untenable.
Need these recruits if they didn't commit 100% to going out and fixing everyone's problems and therefore losing soldiers? These guys are supposed to be xenophobes, right? However, there is one saving grace in all of this, and the one flaw the Brotherhood in this game has is the fact that they are just too nice and don't care about themselves. In their mission of going out and helping everybody in the wasteland and holding some of the most tactically retarded positions on the planet, like a radio station that they...
Okay, tactically retarded. In a radio station, they are holding the radio dish also. Communications would be vastly important in combat situations like this. Holding the technological ability to broadcast is a stupid thing. He must have a different concept of stupid. Communications actually was... Wireless communications is one of the strongest assets that has been brought to the military in years. If these guys descended from the military types, they should know this.
They don't even use to broadcast anything, they just help them out for no reason.
Okay, brings up a good point, but you still want the availability. You think if they're holding it for free, if they need to broadcast something, they wouldn't be like, "Three God, tell them this, or we're gonna basically kick you off and have someone read this ourselves." There's no need for it because they probably have their own basic communications, but there is a backup. Backups are always good. Plan B's is smart for any tactical, or the smartest thing, run away. Retreat is always a smart option. Always a smart option to have.
Steel chapter in the East Coast has begun to basically just falter from what it was. They go around losing soldiers and power armor and weapons all the time to the forces of the Capital Wasteland because they just keep sending soldiers out to help everyone when you can't help everyone.
Besides the battle at GNR, when do they show this? I mean, yes, they have a few fallen and injured people when you meet them when you come out of the metro, and that definitely does seem like you're losing men and equipment, which definitely would break from ideas, but don't think they pick up the equipment, they don't secure the area. Frankly, the fact that they don't have a route to one of their bases is probably more of a flaw than them actually protecting GNR.
Everyone. There's Dead Brotherhood guys all over DC. However, aside from that, and the schism where the Brotherhood of Steel lost some of their forces because, the outcasts, I don't know why these guys are the outcasts when they're the ones, like, following the main Brotherhood of Steel's actual doctrine.
Yeah, okay, he does bring up the outcast. I'm happy about that. He's quibbling over the name, and that is funny. He's absolutely right. Them being called the outcast, I believe they explained it that they called themselves the outcast because they were in the minority. It is still a little weird. They should be calling themselves the Brotherhood of Steel and saying, oh, those traitors stealing our name. But no, they're like, we're cool with being called the outcast. We are the true OG Brotherhood of Steel. They shouldn't give up that name so well.
Doctrine and Lions Brotherhood aren't. They're the outcasts. I don't. Fallout 3 is retarded. Aside from a couple of Brotherhood
It's not retarded. I mean, yes, that particular thing is a little stupid. I mean, obviously they lost. Maybe it's them admitting their defeat and shame that they could not convince the main unit to follow the doctrines of the Brotherhood of Steel. They took it as a badge of dishonor. They dishonored them, their brothers of Steel, so they took up the mantle on themselves. But, funny sort of rant, but
corpses in DC and the outcasts splitting off from the main group just because of ideological differences, nobody seems to notice that Lions is literally sending out his troops in death squad fashion to go out and die for something they shouldn't give a shit about. Lions has started this personal crusade against all the problems in the capital wasteland, and no one seems to care that in doing so he is sending out all of his troops and resources.
Maybe they actually believe in what he preaches. Everyone who didn't left, okay? Everyone who stayed, which seemed like more than the outcast. I would actually have to do a head count of each base, but yeah, you have the people who didn't agree, and once you're committed to a cause, even when you start taking losses with a military discipline, thinking that they've maintained their military discipline even if they changed other aspects of their philosophy of the Brotherhood of Steel. They're still, to the core, Brotherhood of Steel. They're just not Brotherhood of Steel. They're more like just Steel. Which, ironically, is what the original Brotherhood of Steel did. They stole a lot of shit from a lot of people.
To die in the sand. Does no one in the actual Brotherhood of Steel seem worried that they have to constantly recruit new people to fix all the gaping holes in their roster that Lions is leaving them? Everyone's just super cool with this. No one actually gives a shit, and the outcasts don't give a shit because they only left for ideological differences. They just don't like fucking Lions. I said fucking Lions there. I'm sorry. These games are fucking blending together. I can't tell what's real and what's not real. Help me. Like, seriously, Lions is sending all his dudes out to die with no way to replace them other than, breaking the Brotherhood's one rule of do not associate with the fucking Wastelanders, and everyone's cool with that. Like, you never hear any dialogue about soldiers worrying about how many people didn't come back from a mission or whatever. Everyone's just like, yeah, go Lions, Brotherhood of Steel.
Well, this is just a simple matter of how many people are left of the original core Brotherhood. I definitely know one of the Brotherhood people came from the pits, if I remember correctly, which I'm fairly certain of, and I'm probably running the stream too long because I'm starting to get a little out of it. Let's try to finish up with some more of this.
Kill the super mutants, we got this! And even in the story, the Brotherhood of Steel doesn't seem to have any repercussions for what they do. Like, there is no consequence other than leaving a couple of corpses around the game world to lions doing this. They always win. They win everything they do. They face, like, zero hardships. They get their giant, stupid fucking robot. They get their fucking Jefferson Memorial shit. They fucking defeat all the Enclave forever and win the game. Just ignore all those dead people. Who fucking cares? We win. Woo! And that's it for the Brotherhood in this game. They just, you know, make a bunch of shitty tactical mistakes and get to win everything forever because they're the good guys. Not even to mention.
Oh, this is such a simplified argument. Okay, he just said they lose a lot of people for the sake of winning. Okay? Sorry. I'm not following the logic. They just win. They win. They build a giant robot and they win that. Yes. They're losing. They're losing. They're winning. They're losing. They can't do anything without the stupid robot and your help, pretty much. Okay, they're rather useless. They need the lone wanderer to actually help out to do anything, or the big giant stupid robot, as he liked to say, Liberty Prime. Quite a funny quote machine.
Mention the fact that they're the only joinable main faction in this game. And no, the last minute decision with John Henry Eden where you go and you poison everyone is not joining the Enclave, okay? You can't join something after you blow it the fuck up. If there's one mistake that the Brotherhood of Steel made in Fallout 3, it's being in this game. They took away a huge amount of player freedom by being the only main faction that you can realistically...
Okay. It's not player freedom, it's sort of who you side with freedom. They don't have factions in this game, really, so to speak. You're the lone wanderer. Yeah, this is something worth criticizing as a Fallout game. You can't really side with anyone else in the main story quest. You can sort of fall for the psychobabble of the freaking Enclave, and it really is disappointing that they don't let you just join the Enclave and fight against the Brotherhood of Steel. That would have been a nice addition. I will give him a point for this. Would have been nice if they would have included in the game. And I'm not even gonna defend Bethesda or Fallout 3 in that. It would have been nice. Could have they done it and do all the other stuff they have? I don't know.
Join, and their fucking mission here makes absolutely no tactical sense for a faction that is supposed to be one of the most tactically sound factions in the entire wasteland. Like, the Brotherhood of Steel have some of the best training out there. That's what makes each individual Brotherhood of Steel soldier so strong. Compare that to the NCR, who give their soldiers, like 2 weeks of training before they send them out into the field? Yeah, they'd get fucked. But hold up, this is a special TV offer. Not only does their mission not make any sense, not only do they not receive any repercussions for any of the mistakes they make, not only do they take away your player freedom by being the only joinable main faction, it also doesn't make sense that they're...
That's not player freedom. That's story freedom. You are free to just say, fuck off to the main quest, fuck off Brotherhood of Steel. You'll never complete the main story without the Brotherhood of Steel. It's help. Okay? This is the one thing that Fallout did differently. You have 3 different factions. Let's see, the Brotherhood, the Railroad, 4, sorry. You can side with the Institute. So, are you saying just because the storyline gives you 4 factional quests to end the main storyline with, Fallout 4 is better than Fallout 3? Okay. Mister Caption's officially stating that Fallout 4 is a better game objectively than Fallout 3, which I find a load of bullshit. I do agree that end part was a better option with freedom, but other than that,
They're here at all, and allow me to explain to you why. And to do so, we're going to need to go into some Fallout history. Okay, so after Fallout 2, the Brotherhood of Steel and the NCR, the 2 big power dogs in the core region, were having a little bit of a disagreement over who gets the technology out of the Enclave base of Navarro. We're talking like advanced power armor, plasma turrets, plasma guns, the stuff the Brotherhood of Steel really, really wants to get their hands on, because they don't trust anybody with it, and will give them a huge military edge over everybody else, especially that power armor. The NCR, on the other hand, being, the other big contender in this area, wanted it for themselves to increase the strength of their military. Now, the NCR's military isn't like the strongest thing ever on an individual basis. If you lined up 10 NCR soldiers and 10 brothers.
Okay, I'm just tuning this out at this point. I'll have to call it for a night. Not like I had anyone. Probably have to look at this on my own. Who knows? Next time when I stream, what I'll be streaming and what pants I'll be wearing. You're assuming I'm wearing pants. Well, if you're catching this, who knows? If not, bye.